Welcome to Zooming to Webinar Success. If you're needing to plan a virtual meeting and are stuck, this series is for you. Full-time voice artist Grant Holmes is also a busy virtual meeting manager and on-screen host. Learn tips and tricks to having successful virtual meetings from step one. Here's your host, Grant Holmes.
Welcome to Zooming to Webinar Success. What a catchy title, huh? So episode 6, today we're going to talk about frequency and cadence. And I'm not sure there's a definition or definable difference between those, but talk about that in a second. In episode 5, we discussed strategically setting up your webinar for success. So before we go any further, I just want to catch you up in case you've missed some episodes. We've assumed you have a website and or other social presence that is found in searching various platforms. Episode 2 and 3, I talked about researching and deciding on a CRM package. And if you don't know CRM, it's Customer Relationship Management, to operate on so you can track signups, follow-up, and more. And hopefully one that integrates with your website. That'd be really good. Episode 4 was about establishing the goals and objectives of, why am I having a webinar? It goes a little deeper, so make sure you go back and watch that one. And last week's episode 5 was strategically thinking about stepping your audience into and through your offerings of what you're going to do. So today's episode 6. Now that we know what you're trying to accomplish, not just with the webinar, but in general, we need to think about frequency and cadence. So to that end, is this webinar that you're planning part of a series? And I should have touched on this last week on the episode with goals and objectives, but a series to me is more of a final deliverable. That is, if we're looking to monetize, the series would be the money engine. So in my mind, what we're talking about is really a one-time webinar or a one-time webinar done often. So will this be a one-time webinar? Literally, you're going to do it once with no intention to ever do it again. There's reasons that maybe this is one product, one book, one thing, a special offer, you got a deal on stuff you're trying to pass along to people, and you can only do it once. Fair enough. Or will this exact webinar, with obvious changes and edits as time goes on, will this exact webinar be repeated at some regular cadence? Weekly, monthly, quarterly, and so on. Will this exact webinar be repeated at some infrequent cadence? Talk about that in a second. Obviously, the more you repeat the same webinar, again with appropriate edits for clarity or timeliness, the better it will be. Because you get to practice, right? As you can tell, I haven't practiced this. I've mentioned a client that I do 2 webinars for every week. And while the purpose and objective doesn't change, we tweak the webinar every week, if only to keep it fresh for us. But we always work to find some appropriate collateral that is timely for the slides. So what about the how often thing? There's no one right answer, but budget is one huge factor. If you only have the budget to produce and have one, you hold one and work to get the sales to do another. Well, what about advertising and marketing the event? I'd like to make each stand out separately, each event. That is, I'd advise against letting it be known that you'll do this, say, every week. It takes the immediacy out of the energy driving the event. When people know that they can I'll just grab the one next week or 2 weeks from now, you know how life is, it'll be harder to build this one. So at least make it appear that this is a one and done, even though in the background you're planning to do it more often. Better to market for individual events, even when you know you're going to be doing them on some pre-planned basis. The frequency may also be decided by capacity. Not only the ability to hold the webinar and all that it entails and the time to plan and blah, 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 but in the demand that you're creating. So if you're selling a book that's already published or a course that, say, it's automatically delivered from your site in modules or something like that, or something that requires little or no effort on your part, this probably is not a big deal. But say you're building a coaching business. You likely only have so many hours a week you can coach. Do you work on the edge of overfilling your capacity or creating a waiting list? Be careful with all this, however. Once you have people thinking about your solution, it's not too hard for them to also think about and search out other solutions. Just one more thing to factor in, right? Another related question here is, how quickly will your content expire? Are you solving an important problem yet limited in the need for a solution? Or is the problem societal or endemic? This will help drive your how often decision. If this is your webinar-based course being offered, most of the steps are the same, but now you'll be planning content out for the duration of your modules. And you'll want to be sure to keep pumping content into your social media channels to drive the next offering. So your homework this time is to make decisions on frequency and cadence. And I'd love to hear your questions and comments below. Now, next episode, I plan to talk about inviting people and managing, especially when you don't have a large following. This series is for smaller organizations and solopreneurs that may not be tech savvy, don't know all the steps, or don't want to know all the steps. Over this series, I'm going to lead you through the significant decisions and capabilities you'll need to Zoom to webinar success. And as always, if you need help now, don't hesitate to reach out to VoicePro@grantsvoice.com. Thanks for watching, and see you next episode.